As a reminder, 6:30 p.m. Is the new timetable where you could watch Viewpoint on Dbs television. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us in today's edition of the debate program being brought to you by a whole team that always mobilizes to make it a day. That said, today we are having as guest with us here in the studio Cynthia Nkwemu. She is a journalist, and of course, it's not the first time that you might be meeting her in this platform. As well as Mange Venashus, we'll be talking issues related to the Cameroon Airline Company, whether they are or they are not to properly or actually function in Cameroon. What is their necessity? Good evening to you, Cynthia, and thank you very much for being part of us. Anyway.
Good evening, Vanessa, and good evening to our dear televiewers.
On such rare occasions, you are with us here.
Yeah, when God says it is time for me to be here, of course I'm here.
All right, Mange Venashus, are you going to do it the traditional way, greeting some people? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Vanessa. Good evening to our viewers. Of course, I will do it as such. Permit me congratulate Cynthia for making off time from her schedule to take part in today's edition. You know, like she says, I must accept that it has not always been easy having her. At times, she categorically refuses. I'm not available. So today, if she could make time...
Why are you unveiling our secrets here?
If she could make time to be there today, I think that we have to commend that effort, you know, that she has decided to be there today. I think, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vanessa, please, let me greet, there is one man, he's watching us from Jakiri. He's called Mr. Fred Sunjo. And so he's watching us from Jakiri. I want to extend special greetings to him and his family in Jakiri subdivision.
All right, and to all those watching us, hope that you are tuned ready to get what we are going to be discussing in today's program. Let us take the first part of the show. That is the question, yes or no, question and answer. Once more, you are welcome back. In the first question, is it a necessity for Cameroon to operate an airline company? Cynthia, your point of view, yes or no?
Yes.
Mange Venashus?
No, Vanessa.
No. And what can be done to ensure an effective takeoff here in Cameroon? Cynthia?
Of course, there are certain things that can be done to ensure that Cameco effectively takes off and be functional like other airlines.
All right, so there are certainly things. Mange Venashus, do you think that something can be done?
Of course, Vanessa, things can be done if the right decisions are taken.
Let us take the second part of the show, the debate. Is it a necessity for Cameroon to operate an airline carrier? Cynthia, you think that yes, it is a necessity with all the problems that have been going on with our airline company, and probably is going to be privatized with the private owner having a 51% share of it. You think that it is a necessity? Why not give it all to maybe privatization at once?
Well, like you already know, my stand is that Cameroon does need an airline company. You know, having an airline company is not just like, let's say, owning a government school or anything else like that. It is actually a capital thing for the economy of Cameroon. Not only for the economy, but even for the reputation of Cameroon. You know, an airline company is one of the key sectors that brings money into the country, because it not only encourages tourism, but it is a strong, I would say it's a strong foundation in terms of economy, looking at the rate at which it employs, looking also at the amount of the tourists it brings in, and then traveling all through the world, carrying things up and down. It is very important. You know, when we look at other African countries, let's just limit it to Africa and not even other parts of the world. Look at African countries. Most of the big African countries, when I talk of big, I'm talking both politically and looking at the economic aspect of it. So we are talking about Kenya, talking about Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Africa. All these countries do own an airline. Now, why do we think that it is not important or necessary for Cameroon to own one as well? I think the question doesn't even lie on owning the airline, but on managing the airline. Like you earlier said, there's a possibility that the government is actually looking at possibilities for the airline, that's Cameco, to be privatized, with the private sector and a private investor taking up to 51% of the shares. But the bottom line still remains that Cameco, as the name goes, it is a Cameroon airline owned by Cameroon, and even though there's a private investor in it, the majority is still the fact that the airline belongs to Cameroon. So it is quite important for Cameroon to own an airline. It encourages employment. Let's say, for example, if we leave it in the hands of individuals, or even still, what is very fond of being done in Cameroon, we leave it in the hands of maybe France or another European country that comes in and takes over it completely, maybe even changes the name into something else. What is the assurance that the Cameroonians that are currently employed by this company are still going to maintain their jobs? How can we be sure that that's the people who are going to be employed in this company are going to be Cameroonians? So you realize that it is very important for us at an economic level, at a political level, and when it comes to the reputation of Cameroon as one of those key countries in Africa.
And probably the economic hub of Central Africa, if we're talking about that.
Pardon?
The economic hub of Central Africa, Cameroon.
Exactly.
Because most of those countries depend on Cameroon.
Let's say, let's not even look at only the part of it where we transport people. Let's say transporting people from one country to another. Even when it comes to, let's say, goods, Cameco, for example, we have just been talking about the relaunch of Cameco these days, where it was supposed to officially take off from October the 12th, but due to certain circumstances, it has been postponed again. But presently, let's say it is a cargo part of it, transporting goods that is operational. So you see that it transports not only human beings, but equally goods. Imagine that we had to pay maybe a different airline, which is not a Cameroonian one, in order to carry out the transactions. It's actually going to be more costly, I believe, than doing it this way. And also for the fact that the money still remains in Cameroon, it remains in our country. So it is, of course, a necessity
for Cameroon. Thank you very much, Cynthia, for your contribution. Mangavenashus, why do you think that we should not own an airline carrier?
Yes, Vanessa, when I listened to what Cynthia was saying, you know, there are times that simple sense, or what they call common sense, I don't know whether it exists, common sense. At times, common sense tells us that you don't set goals which are not attainable. Even the Bible says, when you want to build, you sit down, take the cost, see whether you are able to achieve the project, and then engages it. If not, you would be a mockery by those who, by the passers-by. Because what is happening in Cameroon is that we are just doing things like Cynthia is explaining, that because Ethiopia has an airliner, because Nigeria, South Africa, all these countries have them, Cameroon should also have them. But then there is something wrong when it comes to management. For 7 years, Cameco has had 9 general managers. There is something wrong somewhere. 7 years, we have 9 general managers. When do you allow a manager to execute his plan of action? You cannot just come in and things change automatically. You need time to put your own strategy into function, and then they evaluate it. That 7 years should have been for one director general, who would have then judged his, capability. But within 7 years, we already have 9. When do we expect them to work? Cynthia was talking about the reputation of Cameroon. It's a fact. When you look at some foreign presidents, when they travel, what you notice first is you see the plane or the aircraft carrying the president is the name of that country. For example, immediately you see Virgin Nigeria, you don't doubt. You know that this plane is from Nigeria. You see Ivory Coast, you see Namibia, you see Air France. You don't need to ask. United States of America, you don't need to ask. But when the president of Cameroon is coming, what do you see? Nothing. Vanessa, of recent, we had a delegation of ministers, Cameroonian ministers, who left Yaoundé for Far North region when there was a flood there, you know what they did? They hired a plane. That's a shame. That's a shame. That ministers in Cameroon will hire a plane to travel with it. What is wrong with Cameroon? When we were growing, they used to refer to Ethiopia as a land of famine. You know, they used to refer to Ethiopians as those who were suffering from malnutrition. Actually, they were. But Ethiopia has proven to the world that when you put forth attainable goals, you can go miles. Why is it that Ethiopia is able to beat all air carriers in Africa? Because they accepted. Cameroon is just a name. You are talking about being the economic hub of the Central African
region.
It is just that pride that we carry, whereas the base does not exist. Because if we were the economic hub of Central Africa, they should be coming to Cameroon. That hub should not be in name, position. We should have it also in plane. Cameroon should be able to send a plane to other Central African regions or countries to carry out to bring passengers to Cameroon, to that hub. But we don't have it, and you will be surprised that they are talking of relaunching a company that has struggled for 7 years without any success, relaunching it, and it fails. Why did it fail? Because when you look at it, the pride of the country, like she was saying, we need the pride of the country to own an airliner. It's true, we need it. But then when we operate it the way we are operating, we are instead killing that pride, because it is a shame for Cameroon to say we cannot operate what Ethiopia is doing.
So should the initiative of the government to privatize it laudable? Even
more than it should be. Even talking of even 49%, we even mean that they should be, that government should even implicate in the running of the airline. No, it should completely be given to foreigners, because when they give it to foreigners, I believe that they will run it like other airlines.
Probably, since they are profit-oriented.
Of course. Because in Cameroon here, when it happened, Vanessa, we've had government ministers who are going out on mission, and you see those who go for that mission having nothing to do with that mission at all, because they are using the national carrier. That is what killed Kamiko. Because government ministers, government officials were not paying. If it were a private company, why did the ministers who went up to far north, why could they not go without paying? Because it did not belong to Cameroon. Do you think that if it was Kameko, they would pay the amount that they rented the aircraft that went to Marwa? Would they use the amount if it were Kameko? So I think that once Cameroon is insisting to run an air carrier, let us run it the way it should be. Let us not run it the way we have been doing things, the Cameroonian way. Because the Cameroonian way has proven that for 7 years we have failed. For 7 years we have, we have changed 9 directors. No, it's not. No, it is not. It's not admissible.
Permit me to come back to that point. My point still remains that as a country, Cameroon, being the country that we are at the center of economy in the Central African region. And the point remains that we do need an air company. Now, like, remember I said when I started that the problem is not on the fact that Cameroon should not own an air company, but it is on the management. The management is the problem and not the fact that Cameroon does own. I think we have the means. We have what it takes to actually manage the airline company, as well as we have managed Sonara, as well as we have managed Port Autonome de Douala and all other big structures that Cameroon owns. The problem lies on the management. That is true. It is a clear fact that management is a very big problem. Well, there are so many issues involved in that particular aspect that makes it not to function. But if the management can actually be improved, and then things are done the way it is done elsewhere, then I think we shall actually be proud to own an airline company. An aviation company, it is a major strength in the economy as well as in the politics of any country. Like I said, look at the biggest countries in Africa economically and politically. They all own an airline company. The problem lies at the level of the management and not at the fact that Cameroon should or can or cannot own an airline company. Right. It is a fact that we do need it, but the way we manage it has to change. It is true that having 9 managers in 7 years, it is completely out of question. It shows a high level of disorganized management, and the disorder is just too much. But if we can handle things the right way, if we can engage people who are really specialized and people who have the knowledge, people who actually know what they are doing, And then as well, maybe if the government can maybe have less to say about it, if we appoint somebody as a manager, we should let the person work, and then I think that way it is going to work a lot better than what we are seeing now.
All right, Manga Venatius.
Yes, Vanessa, it's not as if Cameroonians are not able, call it qualified to manage the
airline.
No, it is the politics that is involved in the management of this airline. It is not because when you look at those who were there, when you look at their background, you look at their
portfolios,
their qualification and portfolio, you see that they have, they have gained enough knowledge that they can run this company. But the problem is in Cameroon here is, I know you because you knew somebody who knew another person, and because you knew another person who was in that other position, it will have to make sure that I satisfy you because you satisfy that other person, and in the at the end, I am not carrying out my function. I am carrying out what I should do to make sure that I please the person who placed me there. It is not because I am not competent. No, if we should be able to run an airline in Cameroon, we should be able to know that if we appoint A as the manager, it is on the basis of competence. It is not on the basis of any affiliation. It is not on the basis of any negotiation. Because if it is on any negotiation, I am not working for the company. I am working to satisfy the contract that brought me into that post. That is where our problem is. It's not as if Cameroonians are not qualified. Cameroonians are, when you look at the last manager that we had, or the last before we had, if look at where he was coming from. He was managing an international airliner too, and it was moving on. But then, okay, look at the appointments that happened. How do you take an assistant or you take board chair to become a general manager?
So in that case, I guess we can both agree that the level, that is, the problem lies at the level of the management. It's not owning an airline company, but it lies at the level of the management. Yes, the problem is not the company itself, but it is the management of the company that is a big problem, and it is what has been killing the company all these years, that it has not even been able to rise. If we can improve on the management, why don't we look at the way other countries that are doing so well with it? Why don't we look at the way they do it? There are partnerships that exist. We can even go into training. If we can even close down the whole thing and then go back to school, go back to train and gain knowledge on how an airline is supposed to be managed. And then we come back with better knowledge and with changes, positive changes. I think it can really work. And from there, we can actually start benefiting from the advantages that it offers. Thank you very much, lady and gentlemen, for your contributions. In our second question, what can be done to ensure an effective takeoff of this airline in Cameroon? Cynthia, you think that a lot can be done. So what are some of those things that needs to be done to improve on our airline career? We had just mentioned some of those things earlier, as Manges just said earlier, that people who are appointed at the management of the company, it should be on a basis of their knowledge and their capabilities. That is the qualification, and not about relationships. And I think that is a problem that we have in most public companies in Cameroon, in most government companies. I know somebody who knows somebody, and then the person comes in, and instead of working to serve the good of the company or of the people, I am instead there to make sure that I please the person who brought me there. And we both know what pleasing the person means. It's not about actions, it's not about doing the job well, but that is making sure the person benefits from having me there. And that is one of the main problems that we are facing. And this issue of embezzlement, I think, comes from there. If it even goes to an extent where we have to bring in a foreigner to manage the thing, as well as long as we shall have the results that we are expecting, it is going, and that it is going to work, then it is necessary. It is not because it is owned by Cameroon that it must be a Cameroonian to manage it. I don't think that is the essence of it. The most important thing is that
we've had foreigners who have run a public companies.
Exactly, and it did work, and it did work very well. So it is still possible. And apart from that, there's also this spirit of laxism that exists in most government companies in Cameroon. You even go to government offices on a working day, go there on a Monday at 10 a.m., and you would not even find the administrators there present. That is the same spirit that exists in these companies that are owned by the government, where workers there think they are not under any particular surveillance and nobody's watching them. They just come and feel maybe 3 or 4 hours of presence per day, and at the end of the month, they have their salary. If they can, I think that also goes to the level of competence. If people who work in these companies are really determined to make it work, they put the welfare of the country before every other thing, then it is really going to work. And also, when we talk of financing, you look at the kind of planes even that Cameco owns, it is not even worth noting. It is not even something that we can be proud of. If the government can invest, let's say put in the necessary amount of money, invest in it, knowing that it is something that is going to benefit the country as a whole, then it is equally going to help it work. There are just so many things that can be done. But starting from there, originally the management and the financing, I think with those two, it is already a pretty good approach. Maybe Venasius can have something else to add to that.
All right, your point of view, Mange Venasius.
Yes.
What should be done?
Vanessa, let me begin from where Cynthia started. She said it will be high time we closed the company and try to acquire some knowledge on how to manage the company and then come and relaunch. And come and relaunch the company. When you look at it, in a normal situation, we're talking about the pride of Cameroon. It is a shame for Cameroon to announce that the national carrier will go operational on the 12th, and on Sunday evening, that is when they publish that we cannot go operational.
Operational at the local level.
Yes, yes, the operational was only within national flight. If I were the president of the country, I would dismiss all those who had something to do with it. All of them, I would sack all of them, because it shows some kind high level of incompetency. How did you study it to give that date? It is not your company. It is not your. It belongs to Cameroon. And when you say like that, everybody's looking at Cameroon just on the eve for you to tell Cameroonians that it will not. How would you assure them that when I will enter and I'm already sitting in the plane, that this plane will take off? Because if you are not able to tell us that we are going to launch today, you cannot even study it, you cannot even study the state of at which we are before you give such a date. There is something we always say in this country, that people make Paul Biya to lie. People make the president to lie. Because they tell him, they make him say things which are not realistic. It is the head of state said we are going to host the 2019 African Nations Cup on the date they are expected. It did not happen. Nothing has happened. Now people come and tell the world, because when we say Paul Biya,
those who are there to execute the tax, they don't do it the right way.
That is the problem. That's why I mean, if I were Paul Biya, I would sack all of them, because they have proven that they are unable to judge, to program the relaunch of Cameco. What proves that tomorrow they will succeed? If they could take all this time, brought the announcement, they were not under any pressure. They brought the announcement with the amount of money that the state is already pumping into it, so that it should take off. And then you people are not able to sit down and study and bring out a normal strategy, a normal schedule for it to take off. It's better we close it. There is no Cameco. Cameroon does not have an air carrier, and then people go to school and study how it should be done, then come back qualified, and then put their know-how into practice. That is what should have happened. But then people just come and sit and say we are relaunching on the 12th. The 12th comes 11th in the evening. What about those who had programmed their flight from Yaoundé to Douala, because from Yaoundé to Douala or Yaoundé to Garoua, because they knew that Cameco was to take off on Monday. Then on Sunday evening, that's when you postpone it. How do you give them hope? We're in a business world which is very competitive. And in the business world, there are no chances for excuses. None. The customer does not want to know whether the plane had the technical fault. No, he wants to travel. Because if he misses what is out there, you may not be able to compensate him for. That is why he has to travel. So you don't have to give him excuses as if on Sunday evening we are not going to take off. So I think that we should close it and do a very good study and launch something that can be. That's what I mean, that we should put targets that are able to be realized. Cameroon should not just stand up and say we'll jump and touch the sky when we know that we cannot jump and touch the sky. We should push things that we can do. Another issue is, I was saying that there is this notion, somebody was saying that at one point you see the way when public officials, the way they act, you tend to ask yourself whether these are real Cameroonians, because they act as if they have another country again. They act as if they have another country, whereas they are Cameroonians. You would understand that they say people are supposed to travel because it is an airline owned by Cameroon. We just take whoever is there and we travel. Who will pay? At think it's high time that the government should say, once they relaunch, I don't know whether the name will remain Cameco or they will call it whatever. If you are going out for a mission, you count the money and pay and obtain your ticket. Obtain a ticket. Then they should not only just sign and say, no, he's on a mission. Government. If you were to travel by another airliner from a different country, would they simply sign? Would they not pay?
No pay.
That's why I still take the example of ministers who went to the far north. They hired a plane. Do you know the cost? Do you know the cost of that plane? If it were Cameco, would they remove them money from the state coffers and pay to Cameco? And later on we complain that Cameco is continually indebting the public treasury. I think that, let us be frank here in understanding that if we are getting into business with Cameco, then it should be, we should operate like, you know, respecting business norms. We should not just operate because it belongs to us. A businessman will tell you that if I am selling if I'm selling this pen, and if I have to use it or give it to my son, I need to pay it. If not, the other company will collapse, because it is just this pen.
Probably one pen will lead to a deficit.
That is what I'm saying. It is just this pen that was supposed to bring in interest. Once I give it to my son without paying for it, this company will collapse. And this is what is happening in Cameroon, because we think that these are ministers, we think that these are directors, we think that because they are working for the country, we can just use it without payment, and that's why it is collapsing. In some other countries, you pay for the services that render. So I think that if we intend that Cameco should actually go operational, let us use it as a business, you know, as a business company, not as a national company, because the only plane that is supposed to be free is the one that carries the head of state. That's all.
Of course, the president.
Apart from the president, apart from the plane that carries the president, any government ministers, when they leave Douala to come to Yaoundé, do they come free of charge? I think that should be the same thing if we intend that Cameco should go operational. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Manga Venashus, for those points you just highlighted.
It's my pleasure.
Cynthia, it has been a pleasure having you.
My pleasure being here as well, Vanessa.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. This is what is happening in Cameroon. Probably we do not bring up problems without proposing some solutions, and these were some of the solutions that our guests tonight had to give. See you tomorrow, God willing. Do take a rendezvous, and do not forget that we are here because you are there. Goodbye.